Hello, this is Harvest, and I'm going to go over some arena fundamentals because I've learned a lot over the last several weeks of playing this game, and I think I have some valuable tips to share with you all on how to win more on your attacks and win more on the defense in arena as a free-to-play or low spender. So let's get right into it. I'm currently rank 16 in my server, which is fairly high, especially when you compare to other people in the top 20. So when you look at the top 20 on my server, I'm at only around 15 million account power, whereas the person ahead of me here, Earl Grey, he has 22 million, so about 7 million more than I do. The next person before that, even greater deficit, where they have about 10 million more power than I do, and it pretty much goes up from that. There's no one in the top 20 that has about the same power as I do at around 15 million. There's no one even close to that, as you can see. When you look below me, they also have more power than I do. So Haney here has 25 million, 28 million, 24 million, 23 million. So you can see that I've been having very consistent success at the highest levels, spending under $100 total on the game. And partially it is luck, of course, and I admit that. And then the other part of it, though, is skill. And I'm here to talk about skill because I can't change your luck. You can't change your luck, I can't change it. So it's not really worth talking about. What is worth talking about is what we can do to change our performance. And I take a very data-driven approach to things, and sometimes it gets very frustrating losing on the attack, especially. But what I do is basically I look at every one of my losses, watch the replays, think about what I could have done better to sort of give myself the best chance to win, and then go from there. Because if you do that, you're gonna at least get better at what you're doing to a certain extent, right? And so, unless your luck starts changing, right? I've had some success. I think the top rank that I've been ever is, I think, number 10. And I just couldn't get past the 10 threshold just because everyone else was outspending me. They are several hundreds of million, 20 million, 25 million power ahead of me. There's no way I could compete with that, and so I'm just comfortably floating in the top 20, which is about where I want to be anyway. And so I'm going to give you some of the tips and tricks that I learned in my climb all the way up to the top 20 of this server. So the first thing that you should pay attention to is your defenses. And I recommend that you always stick to maps 3 or 4. So this is Arena 3, which has this sort of double fence. And then map 4 is this one where there is an asymmetric layout to it. Why do I say that you should pick map 3 or 4? Well, the number one reason is because you want to be protected against the Reiner swap attack. So the Reiner swap attack is a very common attack where the attacking opponent picks a Reiner and swaps your key units with one of their own, like a Thorin or perhaps a protected unit that can't be swapped, like Viperian, or a unit that's under the blue artifact's influence. And then they swap your key unit away and then defeat you that way. I've defeated plenty of opponents using that technique, which I'll talk about in a moment. And so Arenas 3 and 4 protect against this technique because on Arena 3, there aren't that many tiles that a Reiner can swap you. So Reiner can only swap symmetrical tiles. And you can see here by how I've placed my units, there are only one tile. There's only one tile that a Reiner can swap, and it's the tile that Damien is sitting on all the way in the back. Now, Damien is intentionally placed back here because Damien, of course, can't be swapped because he goes off the battlefield when the match starts. And so this setup and this map counters the Reiner swap technique. Okay. Arena 4 is an asymmetric layout, and here too, Reiner has very few options for swapping on a symmetrical basis, which is only these two center tiles, right? And so as long as you're careful about not putting any key units on these center tiles, then you don't need to fear about a Reiner swap attack. Why do I pick Arena 3 now? Because I have a AoE heavy setup, which is the typical meta Irion mages setup with Irion, Arden, and Carolina. This map highly favors AoE teams because these two fences basically create a funnel for your AoE units and Thorin on his retaliation attack to really blast the entire enemy team. And so this map basically acts as a perfect defense for an AoE heavy lineup like mine. The other thing I want to point out about my defenses is the way the units are arranged is done very intentionally to protect against things like Reiner, like I talked about earlier, but also a Vala attack. So Vala is a very common unit that you'll see on the attack sometimes because Vala is one of the few units that can where the opponent can select what unit she targets. In my current setup, I have it so that Irion, all the way in the back here, is the one that receives Vala's flower when the match starts. And I put Irion here on purpose so that he receives Vala's attacks. And that's because Irion, with his shield and dodge chance, makes it very difficult for Vala to get any momentum in the match. It's very hard for Vala to pick Irion off because of the dodge shield and his survivability. And so I've placed him here intentionally so that he takes any enemy Vala's targets away from my most important DPS here, which is Carolina. Now, Carolina and Thorian are placed in this corner here because this fence protects them really well from any melee attackers. So basically for any kind of melee attacker to get to my Carolina, they need to be placed on the right-hand side here. And of course, Thorian being right in front of my Carolina makes it impossible basically for a melee unit to get to my key DPS. Because if Carolina goes down for me, basically my team will lose. And so that's why Carolina and Thorin are tucked into the corner here. So you want to take this principle of protecting your most high value units and put them in good positions on the map of your choosing, either map 3 or 4. So I recommend this setup. So let's say you have a different setup. You don't have my units. Let's say you have the typical low spender or free-to-play setup, which revolves around Cecia and Odie, or Cecia and Odie. So in this case, I would stick to map 3 if you have Cecia and Thorin at a good enough level, because Thorin benefits a lot from this funnel-shaped map, and Cecia benefits a lot because the enemy will be grouped together, and so Mr. Kala will be able to AoE stun pretty much the entire enemy team, and also do a lot of cleave damage in the meantime. So how would I set up a Cecia team on this map? A typical low spender or free-to-play Cecia map. So let's start with Thorin.
Everyone.
I would put Cecia in the corner here because she would be my key
You're
unit.
not even worth getting up
And
for.
because, like I said, this side of the fence protects her from any melee attackers, pretty much. It also protects her from Vala because she is too far forward for any kind of enemy Vala to take advantage of. So I have these two set up. Now, a unit you probably have at a high level is probably Odie because of Dream Realm, and because in general he's a very good all-round unit. So I'm going to put him on the team as well, and I'm going to put him slightly forward so that he's not vulnerable to a Vala attack or a Reiner swap. So he goes there. And then I just have to fill out 2 other units to make my team complete, right? This is the core of my free-to-play or low-spender team. Here I might put in a Smoky, because you might also have a highly ascended Smoky as a result of your push through AFK stages. Smoky is typically a really bad unit for PvP, but he is pretty decent on maps 3 and 4 because he cannot be swapped that easily by an enemy Reiner. And also because I have a ranged DPS setup with both Odie and Cessia being ranged units, he actually works pretty well with this team. So you can put Smoky either on this tile, right at the start, or right at the front, or you can place him right at the back here. I'm going to place him in the back so that he takes any enemy Vala hits, and also can continue to give my ranged DPS healing and haste, which will make them go off. Now I have 1 unit remaining, and it's recommended that last unit be either a Mauler unit or a Graveborn unit so that I can get the 3+2 faction bonus for my team. So here I would recommend pretty much a tank like Antandra or Brutus, or I would use Coco.
Let's go take it to him!
Because I actually really like Coco, because Coco, if her ultimate goes off, pretty much ensures that you win the match, because she gives so much damage reduction. It's going to be very hard for the enemy team to burn you down before you can burn them down if you have a Coco. And if Coco is Ascended, Mythic Plus, she is really oppressive because her ultimate then applies a shield after it wears out. And this shield is going to be really thick and very difficult for the enemy team to punch through. So I'm going to put Coco here in the back, and this is a good example of a low spender, free-to-play, all-around good defensive setup that you can use on Arena Map 3. Now going into Arena Map 4, I'll show you the setup that I would use. So let's say I'm going to use the same 5 units. Thorin, Cessia, Odie, Smoky, and Coco. Now this map is a little harder to place your units, and I don't have much experience on this map because honestly I've been using map 3 from basically the start. But this is how I would approach it, and I'll walk you through my thinking process. Again, you want to avoid placing units on these 2 center tiles because they are vulnerable to a Reiner swap, unless you're okay with Reiner swapping that unit. So you might want to put a Thorin here or here, because it's okay for Thorin to be swapped into the enemy's team, of course, right? So you could choose to put him here, in which case with Thorin at Mythic Plus you would want a unit behind him, in this case Cessia, right? But this is a risky move because Cessia can be transported or warped by Reiner. I would actually consider perhaps something like this, which is you take you shift them a little bit to the left, making it impossible to swap them that easily, and then you place Smokey in the back here, and Coco on that center tile, right? So I think this gives you pretty good protection. Now it's also protected against Vala, because if Vala were to appear on the map, it would be my Smokey that gets targeted by her. So, which is what I want, right? And so the only problem with this attack, this formation, is that an enemy could put melee units here on their most forward tiles, and that could mess up my Odie really quickly. depending on how quickly their melee units advance on my Odie and whether Thorin can get there on time, right? But this is a calculated risk that we take, just because I'm not going to put Odie here because I don't want him to be targeted by Vala. You could also actually put Odie here, but then Odie would be open to Reiner swap, which might be okay. If you're okay with that, that's okay. The other thing you should consider on the defense, besides map and positioning and unit choice, is the artifact, something that I didn't talk about. Now, generally speaking, there are only going to be 2 artifacts that you use in PvP. Either this purple one, called the Confining Spell, which locks down 2 of the rearmost units periodically, or the blue one, which is the Enlightening Spell. Now, you might understand the intrinsic value of locking down 2 of the enemy units with the Confining Spell, but you might not know about why you would want to use the Enlightening Spell. And I'll talk to you about why. So, one of the interesting things about the Enlightening Spell, it gives your rearmost hero immunity to any kind of control effect. And so that makes them immune to your own Reiner swap, as well as the enemy's Reiner swap. The other thing that it does is it gives attack speed to the rearmost unit, which is beneficial for generating energy. And so, let's say you have a Cessia who would really benefit from getting her ult off as soon as possible. You might intentionally make her the rearmost unit, doing something like this, so that she receives the Enlightening Spell, so that she gets off Mr. Kyla her ult ASAP. Okay, and this also makes her immune to a swap. So if you were to place Thorin in the center, like this, and then place Odie in such a way that she is the rearmost unit, then she'd be immune to a swap here while still being on this exposed tile, right? So you can do a lot with the blue Enlightening Spell, and it's actually a very good counter to the Confining Spell, because the Confining Spell will only lock down 1 unit instead of 2 the first time it activates. And so I have sometimes used that as a tiny edge that I gain in Arena on the attack by using the Enlightening Spell on attack and sometimes on defense, because the enemy will often use the Confining Spell on attack. So yeah, that's that. So I'm not going to save that because I'm very happy about my current formation, which looks like this. So how is this formation performing for me? Well, as you can see, I've been attacked 6 times, and I've won 5 out of 6 times on this formation. And all of these people have way more power than I do. In fact, Ronixus here and Earl Grey are much higher ranked than I am. They have not only a lot more power, about 10 million more power than I do, they also have much more MMR than I do. And I consistently win against them on the defense. This is how you basically rank up. If you could win 50% of your defenses or more, like in my case, it can really help you rank up without you needing to be successful on the attack. So yeah, one interesting thing that happened is that you notice that I lost 1 defense by Ronixus here, my only loss in the last day. I'm going to give you a replay. I'm going to show you what the replay is, and then I'm going to show you how I adapted to Ronixus' attack, so that I can win more often. Also showing how I adapt. So in the battle report, you can see that I noticed that my Carolina, who is typically my highest DPS unit, only did half the DPS of my Thorin, which should not be happening. So this already gives me a clue that something went wrong with my Carolina. and I need to change that to be more competitive. Okay. I also noticed that Arden, who isn't Supreme Plus, did more damage than my Carolina, who is Supreme Plus. So there is a problem here going on with my Carolina. I can tell that, and I can see that their enemy's Vala popped off with almost 2 million damage, and their Reiner also popped off with about 1 million in healing, which should not be happening. Because I'm supposed to be running an anti-Reiner defense. I also see that the enemy brought a pretty weak team with the Korin. Korin is typically not used in PvP, so I'm pretty disappointed that I lost this. So let's see what happened in the replay. I'm going to slow things down. Their earring goes off, my earring goes off. Their Reiner swapped the unit. It's Korin. But because I have Damien as the last unit, he doesn't get swapped, but he still receives healing from Reiner. I missed what happened to my Carolina, so I'm going to stop the replay and start again. So Reiner swaps. Oh, it's actually my Carolina that gets swapped, but she's immune because of the enlightening spell. But she gets taken out by Vala because she's the rearmost unit. So that's what happened. And then Vala pops off. She's basically immortal right now, and she picks off 1 unit at a time. My units had no chance. So that's that. Now, what did I do in response? So, I changed my formation slightly. And so I'll pick Earl Grey, because Earl Grey is about similar power to Renixis. And you can see in the battle report, things are completely different. My Carolina did massive damage. And so this is already a clue that things went well and things went differently with this formation. So what did I do? I used the formation that I showcased earlier with Thorin and Carolina tucked into the corner behind the fence. You can see them here on the right hand side. My Carolina is perfectly safe. They have no melee units heading up to that through that alleyway. Of course, the enemy doesn't have a Vala, but the Vala would not be targeting my Carolina anyway. She would be targeting my Irian. My Thorin is wreaking havoc on their backline. My Carolina is wreaking havoc on this bunched up group of people in between the two fences. Now, a lot of units are still alive just because of Florabella. But their Florabella is very low on HP, whereas my Carolina and Thorin are basically full HP. And that's that. A very clean win. Only, I think, one of my units went down, which is Irian, right? Let's take a look at some other defenses just so to make sure that it wasn't a fluke. So here's another attack by Earl Grey. Again, what did he do to adapt? I don't think he changed anything, which is a mistake. If you attack and lose, you need to change your attack in order to have a different outcome, right? So maybe they changed the position. I don't think they changed the units. Yeah, so their Thorin is now meeting my Thorin on the right-hand side. But this is still an advantageous position for me. Looks like I actually did even better on the defense. Every one of my units is still alive. So yeah, that's basically all there is. I think all there is to know about defending in the arena. Now, luck is a big part of it. So in my case, although I am a low spender, I happen to pull a lot of Carolina and Arian. So both are at a high ascendancy. So my Arian is at Mythic Plus, my Carolina is at Supreme Plus. And so, of course, you're not going to be able to mirror the exact same success that I've had on my server with the defenses that I have, right? But hopefully you've learned a couple of things or two about how to position your units, about which maps to pick, as well as how to fine-tune your defenses to be more resilient to enemy attacks. And next time, we'll talk about how to optimize your attacks, which actually I find a little harder to talk about and a little harder to do because, of course, every enemy you attack is different, whereas the defense that you set up will generally work for everyone. You have no choice. You only have one defense. Whereas on the attack, because you have the initiative, you could have pretty much almost an infinite number of different combinations and positions that you can play, right? And so we'll reserve that conversation for next time. So I hope that was helpful. Wish you better success on arena defense. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I love talking about this sort of stuff, and so send me any screenshots of defenses you've set up or attacks that you've done and you wonder about why you failed the attack. Send me any battle reports that you see or replays. I'd be more than happy to go over them with you because I also love the learning process. I love learning from my mistakes. I love learning from other people's mistakes and seeing if I can do better, right? And so we're all improving and we're all learning, and as long as you're doing that, I think you should be happy with the outcome. Don't focus too much on your win and loss record. Focus first on learning as the sort of success metric, because you can't out whale the whales, and so there will come a point in time where you can't ever win, no matter what, no matter how smart you are with your position, your maps, your units, and so on. And so that's why you sort of have to think about other motivators, like getting to a certain tier in Champions League, or getting to a 50% win rate on your defense. Like that would be a, I think, worthy goal to have, rather than thinking that you can always win all the time, right? So yeah. Thanks a lot. Hope that was helpful. Take care, and we'll see you around.